And that's the thing about being an expat. I mean, you go through a lot of extremes. You have amazing days and you have terrible days. And the amazing days are really amazing, but the terrible days are really bad.
So what are your thoughts about the next 16 years? So to speak?
Yeah, no, it's a tough question. I think, well, the short answer is I don't know.
Hi everyone, so we're here with Matt today. So Matt, thanks for joining me, and tell the viewers a little bit about your story, because like me, you've been around the world, you've traveled and lived in so many countries. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first and foremost, thank you very much for this opportunity. And so it's a very welcome surprise. I mean, for the past 16 years, I've lived in different places across Asia and the Middle East. And it was very unexpected how my journey started in 2009. I was working in London at the time. I really wasn't expecting to go overseas, and certainly not, for this amount of time. My journey originally started in Malaysia at a time before even smartphones and before social media really took off. So it felt like the sweet spot of my life in a sense. And then I went on to China, Hong Kong, Malaysia again, Iraqi Kurdistan during a time of the Daesh occupation. That was in 2016. And then I went to Vietnam for a few months, Malaysia again. And then I decided to go to the Middle East, sensing that, it was emerging and changing very quickly. And so I went to Dubai for a couple of years, and now I'm based in Saudi Arabia.
Fantastic. Now, you said something quite crazy there. You were in Kurdistan during the period where the Islamic State, Daesh, came to power, which obviously was a very unfortunate event for that part of the world. But what was it like on the ground? Did you hear about it and then get out, or were you there on the ground when actually the first fighting happened?
So I was on the ground. I wasn't anywhere near the action because the front line was quite far away. And I was based in a city called Erbil, which is, the capital in essence of Iraqi Kurdistan. I felt very protected within the city, so it was very heavily defended or fortified. And so the local fighting forces, the Peshmerga, did a very good job in terms of protecting us. It did mean also that much of the country was inaccessible at the time. For obvious reasons, and so that was a little bit disappointing, because I love travel and I love getting out there and exploring, and especially in a place like Iraq, where you have all these ancient historic sites going back, 10,000 years or so. So the Assyrian civilization and others, and so all these fabulous places that I learned about many years ago in childhood, I wanted to visit, but I couldn't go to. But that being said, Erbil in itself was a city that offered a lot of intrigue and a lot of interest for myself as a traveler. And so I was able to go to various points of historic interest all the same. But also the actual culture of a city was very interesting and unique.
That's interesting, but you said it was well fortified, but did you hear the bombing in the distance, or it was too far away?
No, it's too far away. But but actually, I remember being on a rooftop, so well worked, and seeing helicopters fly overhead, and so and it felt a bit like Apocalypse Now, so the movie. I mean, looking up and seeing all these helicopters and going to the front line or wherever, and so that was a very unique experience. I don't think I'd ever experienced anything quite like it. And I suppose, it was a bit like Vietnam in 1960s or, early 1970s, a very similar kind of context. Other than that, I mean, of course, I did see, a fair amount of military, here and there. But otherwise, it felt like a proper functioning city. People went about, their lives in the usual way, going to bars, drinking, partying. So in that respect, it was pretty normal.
And it's interesting then, obviously Kurdistan compared to say Hong Kong or China, it's very different even to say Dubai and Saudi. So what did you do in most of these places? Were you a business person, or did you have a job, or what happened exactly to mean that you could travel and work in all these different places?
I had a job. Basically I applied and got the job, and that was it. So, initially, working in China, I had been working in Malaysia at the time, and my then employer offered me the chance to work in Shanghai, which I took. And so, and that came after an amazing project that lasted 18 months. And so I went to China for 2 years. In all other regards, I, applied and got the job. So in places like, Malaysia again, working in Kuala Lumpur for the British Council, and in Hong Kong for a PR agency. And so, but I always wanted to further my career, but also, I suppose, experience different cultures. And for me, that's very important. And so I'm a very restless type, I'm sitting here with this thing in my face and I'm feeling kind of restless, but that's my character. I like moving. I just got off a plane from Riyadh. I used to travel a lot, incessantly. So in earlier days, I used to go every weekend to a different destination. Living in Malaysia, I went to Bangkok one weekend, Jakarta another weekend, 2 hours north, 2 hours south. If I had a bit more time, then maybe somewhere like Bali or Cambodia. I went to so many different places, and I used to do it all the time. I have the energy, I have the vigor, and I just find it so stimulating. But I guess it's that kind of restless character within me that drove me to go to all these different places. And I still find it fascinating. It's like when I was a child, I used to pore over maps. So I used to have an atlas, a very weathered atlas now, but I used to pore over maps of the world and see all these, so-called exotic destinations. I remember seeing China, a huge kind of country spanning 2 pages, and right in the middle was a city, Xian, Xi'an. I never imagined that one day I'd end up, going there as a tourist, as a traveller. So, or a place like Myanmar, formerly Burma, or Iraq, or more recently Armenia and Georgia and Oman and various other places. I love it. It's so invigorating.
Absolutely. I think you've got that in common, because I've traveled a lot as well, lived in many places. Although I have to say, I've been to many developing countries, including I've lived in 1 or 2, but I've never been to somewhere like Iraq to live, that's for sure. So that must have been quite a unique experience. But, you've lived and worked in these different countries, and it's been with different employers, right? Because obviously the British Council is a bit different to maybe some of the other employers you've worked with. But nevertheless, you must have learned some things during this time in terms of adapting to the local culture, because even some international firms, some of them, if they're a big company, they're still, if you like, influenced by the local culture as well to a certain extent. So what did you learn about adapting to new cultures, would you say? Because you've lived and worked in so many different countries, right?
Yeah, it's I still reflect on this quite a lot. Trying to get my head around the world and what it really is, and if that makes sense. Obviously the world is going through a lot of change. I've witnessed a lot of change over the past 16 years or so. I've learned a lot about myself as a person, in ways good and bad. So, but I think, how can I put this? We all have stuff in common, really. Despite the geographical differences, the cultural differences, there are values that we all hold in common. And so it sounds very cliched. Like politicians mention this a lot. They say this a lot. We have more in common than, we all have values in common. But in many other respects, we're very different. And so, this is the beautiful kind of paradox that I've personally experienced over the years. So, things like you go somewhere like Vietnam, for instance. I stayed a bit in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. And I remember all the cafes filled with men watching the football, right? So, drinking a coffee, whatever, and watching the football. And you see the same scene pictured with the same scene in other parts of the world, in Riyadh, for instance. So Saudi football is very popular among men. And so all the cafes are filled, Friday night, with men watching Al Nassr or Al Hilal. It's the same thing. Otherwise, fundamentally, there are differences. Of course, the differences. There are religious differences. There are differences in terms of, political, I guess. A political context which can shape a nation. You look at China. But as someone who's experienced all this firsthand, one of the lessons I learned is to embrace it, because because you have to really. I mean, you can't resist. You can't just go in and impose, and you have to embrace it. But I find that by embracing it, it's much more rewarding. I love experiencing different cultures. I mean, for me, it's just the most satisfying thing. Yeah, I don't even hang out with expats. I'm not the type who surrounds. I don't surround myself with expats. I never have done. I don't like expat bubbles. When I was in China, I had Shanghainese friends and friends from other provinces. And when in Malaysia, most of my friends are Malaysian. And so I love that because it means that I learn about, the things that they enjoy doing, what drives them, what makes them different. I listen to their gripes, their conversations about traffic, which is all over the world. It seems to be like universal concern.
Traffic and weather.
Traffic, yeah. It's like, people complain about it in Riyadh, they complain about it in Kuala Lumpur. So, it's the same. And so, or they complain about the employer, about the workday. And so and I find that so much more rewarding than, say, isolating myself from that or resisting. If you go to a foreign country like Japan or Korea, you may as well embrace it fully. Otherwise, why bother? You may as well just stay at home. So that's how I feel.
Oh, absolutely. And I think another thing that people have to remember as well is places change, right? So we were talking before we went on air, and we're saying how we both lived in China in the same kind of time. And obviously that time in China was different to now. And it was different to, say, in the 90s or 2000s. So when I first visited China in 2007, it was a different place to in 2011 when I lived there. And then when I visited there 5 or 6 years ago, it was different. So I guess as well, some of these countries, you notice some changes, right? And sometimes the culture can change a little bit as well, because think about the UK, right? Our culture is relatively conservative in some ways in terms of it doesn't change very quickly. But even the UK, right, it does change a little bit over time, right? Values can change, right? So I guess you've got to adapt yourself a little bit when you live overseas as well, because the culture you're embracing or partially embracing might itself change a bit, especially in those developing societies or those societies like Saudi that are changing quite rapidly.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, it's, I've read quite a bit about this recently in the media. I mean, it's, from my point of view, I mean, I love traditions, and I love going to Southeast Asia and experiencing the traditions there, the wet markets, for instance, and, various festivities and whatnot. But equally, I recognize their rights to develop and to modernize. And so, it's not for me to say, it's their culture. I mean, if I want to build a gleaming shopping mall, right, where a market previously stood, fine. It's not for me to say, but I do. I like both. I mean, I like modernity and I like traditions. Of course, there are certain perceptions I have which are influenced by all these changes. But ultimately, it's their journey. And when you look at the likes of Vietnam, and I highlighted this as an example previously. I mean, like I was in Saigon a few years back, and I remember looking upon the riverbank, the River Saigon, the Saigon River in Ho Chi Minh City, and it was pristine. And going back a few years later, I saw like this a big skyscraper. I don't remember the name, and a shopping mall there, and other buildings. And part of me was very sort of, I felt this kind of wave of nostalgia, encompassed me, because I was thinking, it looked so much better before. But they have every right to modernize and to develop and to progress their economy and to do what's right for its people. And so that's fine. I mean, it's, we all have to change.
Absolutely. And speaking about change, obviously Saudi Arabia has gone through a lot of change and is going through a lot of change. What kind of changes have you seen in Saudi? Because you've been there for a few years, maybe you visited before living there, I'm not sure. What kind of changes have you seen in that time, would you say?
Yeah, I got in a little bit late to see the real changes, and so some of the changes that were brought to my attention were women being able to drive for the first time. I mean, I can only imagine how it was before, and so I'm driven a lot by female drivers behind the wheel of an Uber or Karim, and so and it's great. I mean, obviously it's great. I mean, it's as someone who is based there. I mean, it's it's great. And so other changes are much more sort of recent, I guess. So one is we have a metro opening in December, and this is a critical difference to the mobility of people in a city. And so Riyadh is a very big city. It's vast. It's probably about the size of London. I mean, it's about, I don't remember the exact number of people, but 7 million or 8 million or something like that. It's a very, very big city. And so, the traffic in Riyadh is, I think it's fair to say, notorious. I mean, it's like any big city, there's a lot of congestion at times. And so, every big city I've experienced, certainly, they face this problem, whether it's Bangkok or Jakarta or Dubai even, and of course Riyadh. And so, but then they opened a metro back in December, and what a difference. It's incredible. I mean, it's gleaming, it's shiny, it's state of the art. They have these big kind of touch screens, where you touch a screen, obviously, to get your ticket. And it's very high tech, and it's great, and it's very efficient and very clean, and it's very popular. So that's one of the other big changes. And so, but it's changing very quickly. It's changing very, very quickly. And I don't think there's anywhere on earth quite like it at the moment. And I lived in China, I lived in Southeast Asia. I saw a lot of these changes firsthand. Obviously those countries are going through a lot of change. Singapore as well. But Saudi Arabia, I think, it stands unique. It stands unique. It's not just infrastructural, change. It's also social, and a social change more than anything, from my perspective, is what really sets it apart from other places. And then if you look at the years ahead, we can expect other enormous, changes like the World Cup it's going to host in 2034, the Riyadh Expo in 2030, the Giga projects, when it comes to fruition, it's going to make a huge difference.
And I think another thing is, if you look at, say, Saudi compared to for example, a Singapore or a Dubai or a London or a New York, even though there's a lot of foreigners who live in Saudi, it's not as international still as those places, right? So I think a lot of people go to Singapore or Dubai because, of course, it's going to be a bit different to London or New York. But like Hong Kong as well, you can actually live an international lifestyle. You don't need to adapt that much, right, compared to, say, China, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess in Saudi, people still need to adapt to a certain extent, actually a large extent, as you say, because even when it comes to language, you were saying earlier that Arabic is a lot more important compared to, say, maybe in Oman or Bahrain or Dubai or Abu Dhabi and so on. So there is an adaptation process, right, for expats in Saudi.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's the appeal as well. I mean, it's not just a place to go in and do business or invest or whatever, or to enhance your career or further your career. It's a place to, to learn about a different culture and to fully embrace, these differences, like I said earlier. And there are a few other places like it in the world. I mean, on the one hand, you've got this huge transformation, this drive to catapult, the economy away from oil dependency, and then on the other hand, you have these amazing traditions and heritage that the Saudi people are very proud of, and quite rightly so. And for me personally, I mean, it's very rewarding, to experience that, because I've lived in Dubai and I've lived in Hong Kong, very international places, and both those places have strengths. But going to a city like Riyadh, for instance, and seeing how people live and how they talk in cafes and whatnot, they watch a football, smoke the shisha, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's really, I find it very sort of, it elevates my spirits in a way. And so, life is not just work and making money. I mean, it's really immersing yourself in a different culture. And for me personally, I mean, this is what it's all about. I mean, the expat journey. Otherwise, I may as well just, stay in London or my hometown and just carry on my career there.
Absolutely. But that kind of leads me to something, right? Because one thing I've heard a lot said online about, say, Saudi, is now that it's on the map, some people are taking their playbook from, say, these big cities like a Singapore, Dubai or whatever, Hong Kong, and they're bringing it to Saudi. But in a way, that can't really work in most cases, I guess, unless you're kind of targeting a bubble of people, like, say, high net worths or expats, where it's going to be similar around the world. I'm guessing Saudi is the kind of market where if you're working there or doing business there or you're an investor there, you probably have to adapt quite a lot to the needs of the local market, right? Unless, again, you're targeting maybe a small, tiny niche of people. That might be a bit different. But in general, I guess you've really got to adapt yourself and understand that kind of market. What would you say about that when it comes to the Saudi market?
No, I think it's pretty standard as everywhere, isn't it? I mean, you have to adapt to the local needs of the markets. And so Saudi Arabia is it's not different in that respect. And so, again, it's important to, familiarize yourself with the workings and the cultural nuances of a nation. If you're looking to, do business there, perhaps. And that's why learning some Arabic, I think, is very helpful. Talking to people, listening to people and finding out what makes them tick, I guess, is very important. And so I don't think it's any different in that respect from other places. It's just that, places like Dubai, for instance, and Singapore, they're much more global in feel, in identity. I think Dubai is 80-90% expat even. But Saudi is very much a nation, of Saudi people, right? And so with a proud identity and a proud heritage, and one that's very diverse as well. So this is something I didn't even know myself until I went to a cafe, and I found myself this coffee table book. And I was opening the pages, the glossy pages, and I saw all these amazing destinations in Saudi Arabia that I didn't even know about. And so in the mountains, for instance, and the Red Sea and the north, it's not just Riyadh. And so it's such a vast country. I mean, if you look at it on a map, it's a huge country, obviously. And so, but it's a very diverse and varied, territory. And so, not just culturally, but geographically as well. You don't just have desert; you have soaring mountains that go above 3,000 meters, and mountains that get snow, even. And so it's a country that is revealing itself to the world bit by bit. I feel privileged to be out there now to experience it firsthand, and so my suggestion is that anyone who's looking to go there. To work, to do business. I mean, really immerse yourself and talk to people, travel, learn as much as you can about the nation. It's a two-way process. It's not just about contributing or providing services. It's listening and learning and yeah.
Absolutely. And what's your plans for the future, Dan? Would you say much of the same? Obviously, nobody can predict the next 16 years, but do you think the next 16 years will be similar in terms of going to different countries, having a job, or do you think you'll kind of stick to one location now or start your own business? What are your thoughts about the next 16 years?
Yeah, and it's a tough question. I think, the short answer is I don't know, but I mean, I have ideas. I mean, it's I don't think I'll be doing this for another 16 years. I mean, this is entirely accidental. I mean, when I first went overseas, I was very different at the time, fresh-faced and
as we all were.
Yeah. But this is a.
I had hair when I went overseas, right?
No, I still have some hair, but strategically kind of. But no, I mean, it's the world is very different at the time. I mean, this is Barack Obama was president. Facebook wasn't even the biggest social network in the world, right? So that was MySpace, I think, and the smartphone had only just been launched. So the iPhone, the first iPhone. We'd only just experienced the financial crisis. Millennials were, I think, in school still or university. The world is very, very different. Very different back then, 16 years ago. And now I find myself talking to you in Dubai. And I live in Saudi Arabia. I've been to all these other places. I've traveled a lot. I feel as much as I love all of this, I feel myself changed. I feel a little bit sort of weary. I mean, I still, in my heart, love to experience different cultures. But it's been a heck of a journey. And it's been a challenging journey. I mean, there have been lots of downs as well as ups. And that's the thing about being an expat. I mean, you go through a lot of extremes. You have amazing days and you have terrible days, and the amazing days are really amazing, but the terrible days are really bad. So it's, I think at this point, I'm looking to achieve a bit of stability that I've not had for a long time. And so to have something a bit closer to a normal life, whatever that entails, so maybe, a house and a community and friends and loved ones and, like a local bar that I go to, just normal things. And so instead of like bouncing around all over the map like some sort of crazy pinball, I've done too much of it. And over time, it does kind of, I suppose, have an effect, So it's I suppose, what I'm trying to say is I'm looking to slow down. I'm looking to slow down. And so looking forward to the next 10, 15, 16 years when I'll be approaching retirement, which is crazy, hopefully I'll be in a place where I can just, be in a comfortable community, chilled. Friends, family, the occasional drink, passive income, working on my own projects, and the occasional travel, not travel all the time. Whether that happens or not, I don't know, because the world is changing a lot as well. The world is changing far too quickly, and it's like I suppose this always happens when you get to midlife. You look back at the past 20 years and you think, wow, that's the world was different back then. But it seems to be accelerating now, and it's accelerating on different fronts.
Technology as well.
Technology, for one, right? So you've got artificial intelligence. So that's going to take a lot of our jobs. I mean, I think it's fair to say. It's not just AI, it's other rapid developments in robotics, and they all seem to be converging, right? And then you have all the geopolitical changes as well. I'm not going to talk about these now, but we're all aware of the big shifts happening in the world. And they're already seismic, but these seismic developments are going to have profound implications and consequences in the years ahead. I'm seeing changes to like visa programs around the world. It's like Malaysia, which I highlighted earlier. They made changes to their residency program. There are now competing visas from the likes of Indonesia and Thailand. Dubai obviously has its golden visa. Saudi Arabia has its visa scheme. So it's you have all these opportunities, but you have doors closing as well. So it's very difficult to kind of to look ahead and make any sensible plan. The only thing I do know is that I want to be relaxed, healthy, happy, with loved ones, and nature, and all the good things in life.
Absolutely. But how you mentioned that you've kind of been around different places, and I have as well. But do you think part of it is, okay, you have that longing to kind of stay in one place now, maybe more than before, and I do as well. But what's interesting is once you get to like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years also, you might start to think to yourself, if I stay for longer, am I stuck here until retirement? I don't know if you've ever had that thought, like, say, for example, when you were in Malaysia, you were there for 5 years or so. That's quite a decent stint, right? But did you ever think, well, if I don't move in the next 2 or 3 years, and I've been here for 8 years, I might be here for 40 years. I don't know if you've ever had those thoughts, like where making that commitment to a country, it feels like a big step, if that makes sense, beyond a certain number of years. Did you ever have that feeling?
No, it's I think, the interesting thing about being an expat is that your perception of time is fundamentally altered. It really is. It's one of those kind of curious things. I think partly a consequence of the culture that you're in, because they seem to have their own sort of attitude or approach to time. Malaysia certainly does. But it's interesting. It's like that's such a, I don't even know how to answer that. It's only to say that it's very difficult to make any rational plan as an expat. It's just so hard. It's like I said, I never thought I'd, still be doing this after 16 years. I remember I looked at the Malaysia offer letter when I went back to the UK recently, and it said something like 3 months, right? So you start the project in August, the project ends in December, khalas, and then 3 months became 18 months, 18 months became 2 years in China, but led on to something else and something else and something else and something else, and so it's it takes on its like a life of its own. It's a beast, you know. But I need to tame the beast somehow. I need to kind of put the beast in a cage and tame it. And that's going to be the hard part. And I think it starts by basically slowing down, just, you know, pausing. Somewhere where I feel comfortable and relaxed. That allows me to think a bit more sort of rationally, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, at the end, just for a bit of fun, not serious, we'll have a quick fire round.
Okay.
So first question, you must have learned many languages or tried to learn many languages. What was the most difficult one and easiest one?
Actually, I'm terrible. I'm terrible at languages. I mean, like, I speak Spanish, but, you know, I'm very rusty. I mean, I speak a little bit of Mandarin, but it's mama huhu, idian. Arabic, shwe shwe, not much. A little bit of Bahasa, Melayu, but not much.
That's supposed to be a little bit easier though, isn't it, for an English speaker compared to, say, Chinese?
Yeah, I mean,
allegedly.
1 to 10 is quite easy. Beyond that, it gets a bit tricky. Satu, dua, tiga, empat, lima. Okay, 1 to 5.
We'll say then, they're all equally as difficult or hard.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's look, I mean, it's all relative, isn't it? I mean, it's language learning is a topic in itself, and so I know people in China, expats who've really, you know, picked up amazing Mandarin skills, and not Cantonese but Mandarin, and so and they astonish me, you know, quite frankly, and the same in Malaysia as well. You see these kind of YouTube videos. You know, these so-called content creators or influencers, and they can speak Melayu, Bahasa, you know, very well. Puts me to shame. Arabic, I met, you know, quite a few Arabic speakers among expats, and what other countries are there? Cantonese. Cantonese is difficult. It's very difficult.
I've heard that.
It's very difficult. It's more difficult. What other countries are there? I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's...
Iraq was also Arabic, right, I guess? Or
not really. But it's, but it's...
not so much. Yeah.
But actually, Iraq, I was only there for a few months anyway, in Kurdistan. I think I learned a few words of a language there. It's not Arabic. But actually, I mean, if you do learn a language, again, it's very... Is this supposed to be quick fire?
Well, yes, but you're making some really good points. What you're saying, though, is true, right? Because when I was in China and I learned, again, I wasn't amazing, but I learned relatively decent Chinese, decent enough at the time, at least. It's got a lot worse. It does open up your world quite a lot, right? In terms of like in second and third tier cities where they couldn't speak as much English as in, say, Shanghai, having conversations. But what I would say is a lot of expats who learn the language, they do then start to judge people too easily, because it is very difficult, right? It takes a long time even to get conversational, those kind of languages, right? I reckon if I would have gone now when I have less time, I probably wouldn't have learned as well. Yeah. So it's definitely something people should try, but by the same token, if people aren't good at languages, or they are maybe a bit older, or they don't have as much time, it is going to take a long time, right? If a 60-year-old's going over to China for the first time and they've got a very stressful job and they've only got half an hour or an hour a day to practice, it's going to take them a hell of a long time to be conversational.
Well, yes, right? I'm not an expert, but it's going to sound a bit like Yoda, but you know, don't try, right? Don't try. Don't even try. Just I think, you know, the secret is to again immerse yourself. And so go on the streets and just, you know, when I try it myself, I'm like a baby, you know, I'm just like, I hear noises. Noises, that's a bit psychological. No, I hear sounds, and I want to kind of replicate those sounds, you know, and it's like, you know, you know, it's like, you know, like if you go to Beijing, they have this kind of intense accent, like
that's at the end,
and it's like, you know, and for me, I mean, it might sound a bit kind of inappropriate, but that's how I learn. You know, it's by hearing noises, and it's like, okay, so this sounds different. You know, what if I were to replicate these noises or these sounds in my what if I were to replicate these sounds and, you know, and to somehow turn those sounds into something, you know, vaguely intelligible. And of course they become sentences, and so sentences become, you know, fragments of a conversation. I think that's the answer. I mean, you know, people learn in different ways, but it's to basically put yourself out there, you know, go to the street and say something like when I was in China, I didn't learn much, but, you know, I learned how to order coffee, you know, hot coffee. What is your Wi-Fi password? Stuff like that. And so it's not difficult.
No.
It shouldn't be difficult. It really needn't be difficult. But I think it comes down to, embracing it versus resisting, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And that helps a lot with language for sure. Now, if you could go back to any of the countries you've lived in over the last 16 years for a weekend, let's say next weekend, which country would you choose and why?
What places I've lived in?
Yes, yeah.
Well, I'm in Dubai, obviously, so that helps. But it's for the weekend. But I think, I go to Malaysia every 6 to 7 months. I love Malaysia. I've got friends there. I consider KL, Kuala Lumpur, to be a home away from home. The best experiences I had in my life were in Malaysia.
Okay.
So for me, that's the obvious answer, I guess. I love the food. Just to spend a weekend eating. The famous foods, the nasi lemak, the roti canai, the whatever it is, right? So char kway teow. There you go. I've covered off all the. It's enormously for me personally. It's enormously satisfying. And a weekend, of course, it's not enough, but it's. But I love to go back to all these different places. I love to go back to Iraqi Kurdistan and do tourism in the mountains, or go back to one of these archaeological sites. I wanted to explore further, but obviously, part of the country was cut off, for obvious reasons. So, I love to go back to these places, but it's not easy. It's like I want to be a bit more sort of discerning and selective now, as opposed to okay, I'm restless, I'm bored. I'm just going to hop on a plane and go somewhere, which is what I used to do. Back in the past. So I want to be a bit more sort of focused.
Absolutely. And final question as well. If you could give yourself one piece of advice 16 years ago, knowing what you know now about the expat journey, what would it be?
Oh man. That's a tough one. It's a really tough one. Lots of pieces, right? One piece would be to really take finances seriously. So I'm very much a free spirit, kind of restless, but that also applies to important things in life. So it's good and it's bad. It's great for travel. It's great for meeting people, interacting with people. It's not very useful when it comes to things like managing, finances and stuff. Because
retirement, and you think about it later in life. Usually,
you need to kind of think about these things, and so retirement is really important. And so when I first went out to Malaysia as a fresh-faced professional, I didn't think about retirement. Retirement was far off. In fact, I couldn't even see myself after 40, and now I'm 40 something.
And time goes by quite fast.
And then you're like 40, and it's like, wow, okay, so retirement is 20 years, 25 years away, but I've got nothing. So it's like very little. And that's because other things took priority. So that's one lesson, and I think correspondingly aligned to that, relationships, and that's really important, critically important. So in the context of friendships, relationships with loved ones, that sort of thing. Very difficult as an expat. Very difficult. This is a whole different conversation. Not the most comfortable conversation for me, and it has to be said, but it's critically important. So finance, being proactive about your finances, investing early, not neglecting relationships, or really, being a bit more sort of committed in a sense. Well, more than just a sense. What else? I think being a bit more sort of focused regarding career. So I'm not done too badly, but I'm not done too great either. And my career, I think, would have I would have prospered more had I stayed back home in England, even. So, but probably a bit more focus, I think, would have been better. If I look back over the past 15, 16 years, there are some apparent trends and patterns, and they all point to having a great time in essence. Like experiencing different cultures, which is fantastic, obviously. But that's like tourism, isn't it? In a sense, it's like chronic tourism or permanent tourism. There are things in life that are really important as well. and so you neglect those, and you're going to find yourself in trouble.
Yeah, and I think I've noticed a lot of people say the same thing, right? I mean, all around the world, people say time goes by so fast, right? Faster than you expect in your 20s. However, I think in the expat world, a lot of people say the same thing in terms of like they get to 40 or 50, they think about retirement, but also relationships as well, friendships and relationships. It's easy to neglect, right, if you're moving all around the world, right? And you don't need loads of them, right? You could just have some key friendships and obviously key relationships. You don't need 100 of these things, right? But it's easy if you're moving around to have like many acquaintances, right? But not like real friends, if that makes sense as well.
Correct. And that's really important. And so, I find myself now being a midlife male, and which is interesting. There's a whole new chapter of my life. One that I didn't really see coming, which is odd because at some point it's going to happen. I mean, barring, disaster, disease and stuff. But I'm still here. And it's like, reflect on what's really important. Focus more on the constants in your life. Things are subject to change. I mean, the moment you turn your back, those constants might become less constant. If that makes sense. I mean, that's it. So having friends is really important, right? So as a midlife male, so having friends is really important, and so it's a lot easier to have friendships earlier in life. But over time, people have kids, they have career commitments, and so they're less kind of willing or less able to go out, and that has a profound impact. And so it's important to invest in friendships back home. Where you are, try and build meaningful kind of relationships. In my case, I have a bit of both, very transient, I'd say, but also very meaningful as well. So, some of my most important friendships are in Malaysia, which is one reason why I go there every 7 or 8 months. It's not just, the amazing food, it's to see people and also eat. But also, people back home as well. It's like you find that, again, talking about time, as an expat, I see time differently. But you look at the UK and it's like my home country, and it goes on, it carries on, people go on, move on, it continues, life continues. And so like a conveyor belt or something, a travelator. And so you want to make sure that you're in sync. You don't want to neglect relationships. It's so important. I don't know if that makes sense. It's such a big topic.
But one thing I would say, though, about that is I think people who live in the same country all their life, sometimes they don't know who their real friends are for too long. Because if you think about it, if you live in the same place, the same city, you're never too far away. You're not out of sight, out of mind. But if you move abroad, those people who stay in contact with you, they are your real friends, if that makes sense. But I do think if you stay in the same place for a long time and it's so convenient to like meet up with people, the only thing is sometimes you don't know who your true friends are, if that makes sense. Whereas I'm sure for you, if you've kept in contact with those people in Malaysia or the UK, they are your real friends, right? Because you're miles away. You might only see them once or twice a year.
Yeah.
So they are surely true friends because they don't need to make the effort, right? In a way, because you're a long way away after all. It's not like you're down in the pub, right? And you can just be contacted and they can walk there in 5 minutes. You're a long way away, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, this conversation. It's made me kind of reflect again, think about, the importance of maintaining those relationships and maybe even segmenting them. I mean, like, WhatsApp allows you to do that, but I think it's such an important message, to really invest in friendships. And so, especially as we get older, I don't want to get to like 50 and basically have my birthday in a desert, like a Billy No Mates, none there apart from me and a few kind of desert rats or something. It's like, the thought of that doesn't sound very appealing, right? I mean, I want to have like, hey Matt, wow, this is your 5th decade, we love you. Well, not all of us, but it's but I've learned all this the hard way, basically, and the story of my expat journey is really the story of my life, and so my adult life, and it's all learning, and I'm sure that every midlife person goes through similar challenges. It's just that I happen to be overseas, and in many respects, those challenges are amplified because of my being overseas.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
and I'm able to kind of see them differently and reflect on those differently.
Yeah, do you know what it's like? I can remember it was Mark Cuban, and I think Warren Buffett said the same thing about money. I've noticed that money just amplifies people. It removes the mask. If someone was a nice person before having money, they're probably going to be even nicer when they have money because they have more options, more choices. If someone was not a nice person before they had money, they have money, it could be even worse, right? Because they don't need to humor people and so on and so forth. I think expat life actually in some ways can be a bit similar. It does remove the mask a little bit because people feel more free, right, than back home. So that's something I've always thought, right? And you notice that, I noticed it anyway in China, right? When these young people come to China, they feel so free. They're in this new place. They can't understand the language for a few months. When they're drinking, they don't have to behave in the same way as in their hometown. So in a way, I think expat life is great for certain people. But if people are having that internal struggle, I know it's a very deep topic, like say young people who are having these internal struggles, sometimes it can amplify those problems, right? So it's like a double-edged thing, I think, because like you're away from family as well, so you're probably more vulnerable as well to add to that, especially when you're very young, because we came out at a young age. So I guess in a way, expat life, a bit like someone who has a lot of money, in a way it kind of, it opens up a lot of opportunities, but it also has risks, right? Like it exposes people's vulnerability. They don't have the support network. They don't have their friends nearby. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but looking back at my time in China and some of the very young people I saw, I did feel like, in a way, it removed the mask because they couldn't rely on their friendship network, everything like that. And instead, they just were themselves, which was great. They wouldn't care about what people thought as much as back home, right? But by the same token, I did see some people go off the rails a little bit. So
yeah, I mean, it's I think it, you know, I've seen a lot of extreme characters, you know, for sure.
Oh yeah,
especially in China. I mean, like extreme expats. I think it's fair to say. I mean, like people with extreme behaviors, and I think, I mean, you know, one of the more common. I guess someone might have, you know, categorized expats, put them in different sort of buckets because we're not all the same. But you do get these expats who feel elevated, if that's the right words. You know, they find themselves overseas. They have a bit more money, perhaps, relative to what local people have, and you know, a sense of kind of a sense of self-importance kind of overwhelms them. You know, it's like they think they're superior or somehow better, and you know, it's arrogance. I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You know, I've met a lot of arrogant, you know, types who think they're, you know, the mutt's nuts. You know, like, but it's almost like a false reality. It skews reality. Being an expat, it exacerbates. You know, certain qualities, and as you rightly said, I mean, you're away from home, so you know, some people think that they can do as they please in a sense. You know, they, you know, set their own rules. You know, they feel sort of empowered, but to an extreme. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean,
it
like,
does.
You know,
yeah. It's a double-edged sword in a way. It brings opportunities. It brings out people's good sides as well.
Yeah.
But it can also bring out the bad side if it's there potentially as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's and I remember going out to Malaysia initially, and I felt like £1 million. I mean, I felt amazing. I mean, it's like, you know, coming from rainy London, you know, this difficult commute every day, microwave meals every evening, and then all of a sudden, I had this amazing job in an amazing city, Kuala Lumpur, with the ability to travel every weekend to places like, you know, Singapore, Bangkok. And if I didn't fancy traveling to those places, and I went to the East Coast Islands, you know, for snorkeling. I mean, I felt like I'd won the lottery, you know. But then in China, I felt different emotions. You know, like wow, I'm overwhelmed. I mean, you know, the language is completely different, the culture is completely different. Shanghai is vast, like 26 million versus, you know, the 4 million or so of KL. It was a very different sensation. You know, I wasn't surrounded by nature. You know, in Malaysia, I had rainforest even within the city. In Shanghai, if I wanted to see nature, I had to hop on a train. You know, the high-speed train to Hangzhou, to the lake there, and so or beyond. So it's a very different sensation. I mean, and that's the thing. Like being an expat, it exacerbates your feelings and behaviours.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've seen that as well. But really great conversation, actually.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming in.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's like, it feels a bit like therapy. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like
I didn't expect the conversation to go in this way, but it was actually very interesting for sure. So
I don't know if it made sense, but it's like it is interesting because it allows me to reflect on who I am and the life of an expat, and so it's not easy. I mean, it's I've had a lot of time to think about this, and I don't really understand the journey I've been on. It's completely crackers, it's completely, it's surreal. It's absolutely surreal.
Absolutely. Sometimes I think the same, having lived overseas for well over a decade. It does make you reflect more. I think that's a good thing compared to being at home. But great. Well, until next time, everyone, like and subscribe and share, and have a good day.